everyone. I'm Vicki. I'll be talking a little bit about a workshop framework that we use at HubSpot about designing user feedback mechanisms with machine learning models in mind. And as a lot of the work we do, where's good? Sorry. A lot of the work we do is cross capabilities, and I'm going to be talking a lot about speaking across disciplines. I wanted to start with a quick poll for the audience. And so if you get out your phone and go to menti.com and use this code, there will be 3 of these get to know you questions, just as a heads up. But I really like understanding who's in the audience, and it helps me connect what I'm talking about to be really relevant for you all. So I'll give you all about a minute to do this. You'll start seeing the room populating. I like the little guy in the right-hand corner. It's like, you get a ball, you get a ball, you get a ball. So I'll give it about 15 more seconds. And then I'll move on. Cool. So these are your neighbors in the room. So it looks like we have a really good mix of people in here. A lot of UX designers, data scientists, UX researchers, and also some software engineers, some product managers, project managers. So thank you all for coming. I'll be kind of talking about how I think we all can work together to design user-first models. So now I'll just restart. So a little bit more about me. Hi, I'm me. I'm Vicki Ziemer. I'm a UX researcher at HubSpot. I'm embedded within the machine learning team, which is about a good size number of engineers and data scientists. And we have 2 product managers, and I'm the only UX team member for the machine learning team. We're based in Cambridge, so if anybody wants to relocate out of the Bay Area, let me know. Before that, I was at MIT. I've had a bunch of different experiences doing what does machine learning and UX look like together in different contexts. If I'm not in front of a computer or in front of a user, most likely I'm studying to be a sommelier, which I'm doing very seriously, and I need help, or taking a nap. So what exactly even is HubSpot? This is a question that honestly I didn't know the full answer until I started working at HubSpot, because it's a B2B company. So unless you're directly interacting with us, it's pretty easy to just not really understand what's going on. But if you're a small and medium-sized business, we're just for you. At the core, we're a B2B SaaS company, and we cater to small and medium-sized businesses. Today, we have over 60,000 customers in over 100 countries. And the HubSpot platform is composed of 3 major hubs that come together: Marketing Hub, Sales Hub, Service Hub, and a powerful free CRM. And we give small and medium-sized businesses the tools they need to grow their businesses. And so what about the machine learning team at HubSpot? So we're responsible for building the company's ML platform and also the user-facing machine learning implementations. And we work across product lines, so we kind of are like this moving group of resources that, the CRM team will say, hey, we like to do something with ML, and then we roll up and have conversations, and then maybe email says, oh, we had this idea, and then we roll up there. We're working to make HubSpot the tool that knows who you should talk to, when you should talk to them, and what you should talk to them about in order to find the right customers for your business. I'll give you some examples of what the ML team has done so far. We just released a contact deduplication tool, which sounds kind of like, what is that? But if you think of your customer relationship manager, it can have like 20,000 contacts in it. And maybe there's a lot of duplicates and you're just wading through piles and piles of data. We have an ML implementation that can help you find what are the duplicates and help you merge contacts so you just have better quality data instead of just having more of it. And so in order to make implementations such as those one, and more broadly turn ML into magic, you need to have good data to train the models, right? And if you don't have that data, it's kind of hard to have a good output. So for some use cases, it makes the most sense to initially label mass amounts of data, such as like, what are the topics of these support cases through Mechanical Turks. But also there's ways that you can build your product so that users can be giving you this data that you're looking for. So in other words, we like to try to think about how can our users help us grow these models while we're still giving them the feedback and valuable outputs. So with that in mind, I wanted to think about how we could build ML implementations that were more user first, rather than just being dreams of the machine learning engineer saying, I have all this data, let's do something with it. I wanted to say, let's find the user problems and go from there. And a lot of times when we found the user first problems, we didn't have the data to support it. So the main way I have thought about this mission is to think about the different pathways users create trails of data and what user interface feedback mechanisms go along there. So by designing feedback systems that translate users' actions and sentiments into understandable data for models, we can highlight and produce data that then creates better opportunities for our products to be consistently learning and providing value for our users. But if we're talking about data, I want to explicitly call out some considerations that we all, as global citizens of the tech world, have a moral responsibility to adhere to. First, with so much data at our fingertips constantly, it can be easy to forget that this data that shows up in CSVs or somewhere in a database belongs to real people and therefore requires the utmost caution when handling. And with that in mind, I encourage everyone to constantly be assessing the trade-offs of using user data and the service and value you are providing to the user in exchange for that data. So who ultimately benefits from the ML implementation, the business or the user? Please constantly be critical about that as you practice the ML world. Now, back to our originally programmed content. UX can and should be a part of the machine learning research, designing, and implementation of ML models, not just thinking about the user-facing, what ends up being in the interface. So with that in mind, I propose a 3-phase structured workshop that helps multi-capability teams, such as software engineers, data scientists, UX designers, UX engineers, build together constantly growing user-facing ML models via strategizing user feedback mechanisms. So here's some logistics of what I'm going to talk to you a little bit about. So this is a 3-phase workshop, like I said, that can be adapted to teams' growth. And I kind of want to stress that this logistical part about how exactly this 3-phase workshop goes really needs to be tailored to teams, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. It's primarily led by UX team members, and those team members act as both a user advocate and also the product experience strategist. It also directly involves software engineers and data scientists who will, at the end of the day, typically be the ones building out the ML models that we're talking about. So when is this the right thing to use? Well, first of all, you should know exactly when and where you want to implement some machine learning into your product and why. Second of all, you should have a clear understanding of the user who will be completing the task and or going through that interaction, what their goals are, their values, and their constraints. And with this full picture, knowing, okay, we're definitely going to do machine learning in this part of the product because that is the right answer, and this is who's going to be using it and why. So here are the 3 phases of the structured workshop that I propose. It's important to note that these phases need to be completed sequentially. The first phase of the workshop is to define the ideal UX for your specific users. The second phase, we figure out based on those interaction points along the user journey, what user-created data will we have to work with? And then finally, we take the data and the UX implications from the first 2 phases and start making decisions on what we'll actually build in the ML model. So now, how to run this workshop depends a lot on how you think your team will work best together, brainstorming and sorting through each other's ideas and priorities. For our team at HubSpot, we love either physically annotating screen-based interactions in response to the prompts, starting from scratch, and answering the questions sequentially, and then sorting them out and finding the themes. You can also just use the questions that I'll show you as a verbal conversation or debate, depending on your team dynamics. A lot of it has to do with your team's resources, priorities, and goals. Additionally, I'm still trying to figure out what the best way to build out the structured workshop toolkit would be like, so I'd love to hear people's thoughts and hear about your own team's experiences doing similar processes, so I can help maybe tighten up a suggested format for answering these kinds of questions. So now phase one, let's get growing, y'all. That's the unofficial title. Didn't make the cut for the slide, unfortunately. So in this first phase, we'll do a user first assessment of the product journey. So the overarching goal of this first phase is to answer the following questions. What are our users' goals with their software service interactions? How does our company measure the success of this interaction? So we start off this assessment by outlining the user journey. So like I said, this is where it being centered by a UX team member really comes to stand, because this first step is foundational to the rest of the process. This is also the part of the process where that UX team member takes charge and asks, what would the ideal user journey be if we were not looking at any constraints? And a little FYI for the rest of the presentation, if you notice, there's like little bullet points. Each of those bullet points act as guiding activities for the workshops. So they put structure in the structured workshops. They're there to help guide teams through thinking critically about the tasks at hand. And so once we outline the user's product journey, we highlight all the possible pain points that it could occur. So I know up until now this seems like a lot of what normally UX researchers or UX designers do as they're figuring out what areas to target in their research or just strategizing product, and it's by design. So by figuring out where all the possible pain points are, we can rank them by severity and also be able to figure out what are the trade-offs we can make later. On the flip side, we can find the moments where we may be able to bring delight by thinking about the emotional context of the users as they proceed through the product journey. We don't always want to just be thinking about how we can make an experience less bad, but more about how we can make things more awesome. This is where, if this was in HubSpot, I'd have like 3 GIFs of people cheering, but this is also a really good point within your team to remind each other that working together and make the users' lives better can have huge payoffs. And I know we're all people that care about people because we're in this room, we're trying to learn more about UX, but I think, speaking as somebody working in highly technical teams, it can be very easy and some engineers, not all, but for some engineers to start thinking, I have all this data I want to use, just don't get in the way of me leveraging this data. But this could be a really good time to show them the value of thinking about the data and the user in a user context. Now on to phase 2. So in this phase, this is kind of a whirlwind, so thanks for bearing with me. But in this phase, we figure out, based on the interaction points, what user-created data do we have to work with. So we know that a user creates a whole trail of data through all the interactions they do. So how can we use this data to make an ML model really optimized for that user? Let's look back at each part of the user's product journey. At which stages of the journey does the user make decisions? That's probably going to be a lot of moments. It's important to highlight the main points where they make decisions as areas that can inform the prediction and / the output of the ML models. So now when a user sees the output of a model, at the core, they're confirming if the prediction is right or wrong, right? or wrong? I'm asking you guys. In the scheme of this interaction, what would make more sense is for the user, or would it make more sense for the user to say, yes, this is correct, or no, I think you got it wrong? This will become more important when we start thinking about how the model is using data to inform predictions. Now, there are two main types of user feedback we can look at. The first one is explicit feedback. Which parts of the journey would make sense for the user to actually say, yes, this is what I want, or no, you got it wrong, versus which parts could we implicitly, through behavioral feedback, see that our predictions were wrong or were correct. For example, let's think about when you're shopping and you're being shown something through a suggested, here are items you might be interested in. The behavioral feedback for that could look like, okay, somebody clicked and they bought it, success. But the explicit feedback would be somebody checking something saying, yes, I am interested in this. In that situation, using the behavioral feedback makes a lot more sense, is easier, and you're not really asking the user to do extra work. Instead, you're just being able to make an inference based on that decision that they made. So now we're going to jump to another one of the questions. So kind of talking about this note of what type of data does your team rely on the most? Is it this explicit feedback, this yes, no? Is it behavioral feedback where you're making inferences about yes or no? Or just simply qualitative user feedback? I'm going to wait till we hit 35, so this is peer pressure. Oh, 34 is, oh, great. Okay, so you can keep sending it in, but I think it's really interesting because as I talk to a lot of different companies, it seems like there's a different culture around what kind of data is the right data to be using. And it's always good to remind teams that the right kind of feedback that maybe they like maybe is not the right kind of feedback that will actually help the machine learning model. So for example, I'm more of a qualitative researcher, so I love this qualitative user feedback, and I think it's super crucial for telling a story, building the narrative about why we're doing something, figuring out what the context is like. But if you tell a machine learning model, they feel really great that day. The machine learning model going down their decision-making tree and figuring out, they don't really, the model doesn't know what to do with that. The model's looking for, is it this? Yes, no. Is it this? Yes, no. Is it this? Yes, no. So a lot of work I end up doing with different teams at HubSpot is saying, okay, we're providing this feedback. Let's say you have a notification. Is this notification relevant for you? And they say no. And then they have this whole list of other things. I'm like, okay, the machine's really just going to be able to see that it's not relevant. So if you want to be informing this machine, the model, maybe we need to be thinking about how we change the way we're giving feedback. The user is providing feedback so we can leverage that feedback to make the machine learning model grow. And finally, on to phase 3. We made it. Thursday, last phase. In this phase now, this is where I have found it gets most sticky for teams. And I don't mean sticky like it gets a lot of social media impressions and it's going viral, but sticky in the sense that this is where people's true colors start coming out and the politics of your team shows themselves. And at least as a UX person is usually where I have to stand up the tallest and carry a big stick, I guess. But in this phase, we're going to figure out, but I'm going to give you some questions you can use to have cross-capability conversations about how priorities and goals align across different capabilities in order to make final decisions on what the data and the ML model will ultimately use and how the user will provide feedback to that model. So like I said, this is where we really start making the magic come to life through a concrete game plan of proposed ML model data inputs and what the user-facing implementation will be like for the user. Let's look back at the product journey we outlined in phases 1 and iterated on 2. It's time to remind ourselves of the severity of possible pain points and all the places where these things can fail. And start looking to see what the user-created data looks like through the ML model lens. What feedback will be most helpful? Teams should discuss each of the bulleted points proposed on this slide and start making judgment calls on their own. Again, I want to remind everybody, we're filming this. You can come back and watch the YouTube video. I also, with your feedback, will hopefully write something up and be able to put out a worksheet with these questions or something, or card set. I'm still trying to figure out what that looks like, so this is where I really want feedback. But these are some of the questions that help guide us when I'm talking to the data scientist and talking to our machine learning data infrastructure guy and trying to figure out what can we do and why do we need to do it. So to kind of wrap up the workshop, the major stakeholders in the success of this ML implementation need to weigh their own priorities and find alignment. Like I said, that can be sometimes the trickiest part of all this. For some teams, the alignment direction is really defined by how business views the success. And I want to remind everyone, though, that there should also be a user-focused KPI about what success and delight looks like from a user perspective. It's not all about engagement, but is what do we want the user to feel? Do we want them to actually spend less time but have more powerful interaction? So make sure you're advocating for some user metrics in there as well. And now is a good time to start thinking about what user testing this ML model implementation could look like and how that would be able to guide an iterative design process of this interaction. So yeah, what a whirlwind. If everyone just raise your hand, stretch a little. We're almost there. This is 7th inning stretch, but I will not start singing Take Me Out to the Red Sox ball game. So to wrap it all together, I want to remind everyone of where we started. We just walked through a 3-phase structured workshop where we took a user-centered approach to discussing and designing a real user-facing ML model implementation. The actual form that this workshop could take ranges from commonly used Post-it note, brainstorming, affinity mapping methods, to sitting down and having a heated debate or conversation around these questions. So no matter what shape the workshop takes, the important thing is to be spurring cross-capability team dialogue about what a user-first ML model would look like within your own company and your own product. So the final question. So with these three phases in mind, which phase of the structured workshop would you think would be the most helpful for your team? So the first phase, just to review, let me see if I can do this. You guys can see all this, right? There we go. Cool. And so I am just going to ask one question of all of you. Does somebody who chose one, briefly, 1 or 2 sentences, be comfortable sharing how their team would be impacted by using something like this in the phase 1? No? Okay. I'm guessing that for 2 or 3, we're not going to have takers. Oh.
I could give a shot. So I think one is important because sometimes we do not really understand what all the user steps could be.
Mm-hmm.
So to jump step 2 or step 3 could mean that they've actually got all the some of the variables not correctly defined.
Yeah.
And hence impacting 2 and 3. So if you don't get the first one correct to a good confidence level,
yeah,
I don't think the rest can go.
Yeah, that's a great point. Anybody who chose 2, and 2 was figuring out what's the trail of data based on 3. Okay, it's okay. I tried. That's what's important, right? So finally, I kind of just wanted to call out some omissions of this workshop and the fact that all of this is still under construction. I think what I love so much about being a UX practitioner within the ML space is so many of the best practices are still being defined, and that's what's exciting, and that's what's really exciting to me about this community is we can have these conversations and figure out what do we actually want the outputs to be, what are the tools that we benefit most from. But some things that I'm thinking this workshop will not be is how to deal with legacy design patterns, and I'm sure many people in the room can relate to the frustrations of those systems sometimes. Also, internal politics of teams and resources. If you're one UX researcher and you have 500 different parts of product moving and implementing ML, it can be hard to be in all those conversations. Figuring out how much data you will need and how exactly you can secure that data. And also, I don't really talk about, and I don't plan on talking so much about how do you then test the user-facing interactions you end up designing. That might be way later, but I think I want to tighten this up first. So my takeaway for all of you is that UX can and should be a part of defining and building ML models, not just their user-facing implementation. I always say within HubSpot that our machine learning modelers, I guess data scientists, are just UX designers of an algorithm. So let's discover how we can do this well. And if you have questions, thoughts, you want to connect, you can ping me. All my info's up there. Also, here's my advertising plug. We're hiring a few senior roles in Cambridge. This is the global growth team, which is a lot of fun and really great people. We're looking for a UX research lead with previous UX research management, and also a design manager, obviously with management experience. It's a really exciting, huge, important team at HubSpot, so talk to me if you're interested or interested in anything else. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vicki, for sharing that. That was really cool. I think Vicki's actually done a really great job. Well, first off, like, holy cow, can you believe she came all the way out here from Boston to share this with us? I think that's awesome. But I also really don't see a ton of people in the space, like, thinking about how does UX fit in from the beginning before the model is built. So super stoked that you were able to share this with us. Thank you. We will have some time for Q&A afterwards. And I really just hope that you guys get a chance to look at it. We did take some photos. You'll be writing something up too. So sweet. Okay, now we get to stop the recording.